Hello students, this is essentially a lecture on the essentials of thermodynamics and probability needed for learning statistical mechanics. This portion of statistical mechanics is in the syllabus of MSc semester 3 and also in BSc undergraduate in class second year. So we moving forward. Let us start with the basic question I put before all the students is that uh, why statistical mechanics often begins with thermodynamics. We all see in our books that the initial chapter of the statistical mechanics portion is on thermodynamics. So we should understand that the thermodynamics is not a must for statistical mechanics, but we need a background of thermodynamics. Statistical mechanics, we all know that it provides a microscopic basis of thermodynamics and it gives meanings to terms to macroscopic terms such as entropy and free energy, which would have been otherwise rather hard to understand. Thermodynamics by itself is not very useful because it does not have the capacity to generate absolute numbers needed to understand experiments. For example, the first two laws define all sorts of relation between thermodynamical quantities and functions like entropy and energy, but it doesn't describe us the ways to calculate them. This lacuna is partially removed in the third law. So the ultimate goal of statistical mechanics is to describe the thermodynamic behavior of macroscopic observables in terms of the molecular structures and intermolecular potential. So if we summarize it, the quantum mechanics and statistical mechanics together form a complete first principle theoretical framework that should be able to explain the physical properties of the system. Uh, if we go on to see the deterministic approach in classical mechanics. The deterministic approach in classical mechanics is sufficient to describe the state of a one body problem or a two body problem, but it is insufficient to describe a system composing of Avogadro number of molecules. What we study in classical mechanics is if we know the initial conditions of a system, it is provided, then we can predict the future evolution of the system. So evolution of the system is determined by the equations of classical mechanics. There are two approaches to do it. One is the Newtonian equation of motion, and other is the Hamiltonian approach. So the Newtonian approach is the deterministic approach. Hamiltonian approach is also a deterministic approach. In the Newtonian approach, we write expressions in terms of the velocities and forces, where it is given that the force acting on an ith particle, say Fi is mi into dy I upon dt. The Hamiltonian approach is more suitable for system with constants. So now we allow a classical mechanical approach to describe a system of an Avogadro number of molecules. Say, let us allow, we are allowing that approach to describe a system of a large number of molecules, say 10 to the power 23 molecules. Solution of the Newtonian or Hamilton's equation even for a three-body system is not possible. So if we use computers to simulate the motion of say 1000 number of molecules, then we can predict the trajectory. But even though after obtaining the trajectory of our system, the position and velocity of all the molecules are supposed we have been determined, then we don't know what to do with this such a large amount of data of a large number of molecules. So the conclusion is to determine the deterministic approach of classical mechanics is inadequate, is not sufficient to describe the many particle system. Then what is the alternative approach, alternative way to describe the many particle system? It is the statistical mechanical approach. It is based on the equations and concepts of classical mechanics, but which abandons the deterministic approach and instead it uses a probabilistic approach. Translation from the description based on particles to a description based on probability distribution is highly meaningful. Change of theoretical description from a direct deterministic, mechanical, and particle-based approach to a probability density-based approach. And the two basic assumptions or postulates which we make at the beginning of statistical mechanics are the most important inputs for the further evolution of this subject. So the two postulates the ergodic hypothesis and the postulate of equal priori probability allows us to go over to the probability based description. We can make assumptions and approximations, obtain results in the closed form, and which can be directly tested against the experiments. At the first level, these assumptions allow one to develop a description for the equilibrium properties of the system without concerning the detailed particle trajectories of the different particles. So, refreshing now the concept of probability, statistical mechanics deals with system of large number of degrees of freedom. We know that for each water molecule there are 9 degrees of freedom. So to consider approximately 3 into 10 to the power 23 degrees of freedom for a detailed microscopic description of the structure and dynamics. If we at all desire for such a description, then it is not possible nor it is necessary to learn the entire history of each particle, means the position and velocities and the momentums of each molecule. So the probabilistic formulation is essentially needed in statistical mechanics. We have no option but to leave the deterministic approach and employ the probabilistic approach. This approach was initiated by Maxwell and Boltzmann. Historically, the first probabilistic approach was pioneered by Maxwell, who derived the probability distribution function for the velocity. We all studied in the graduation classes about the probability distribution function for the velocities. So, in a nutshell, in statistical mechanics, we make the transition from a deterministic approach to a probabilistic description. These distributions are often not directly measured. We all should understand that the basic idea of distribution functions is that our observable is intrinsically a random quantity, and values of all random variables depend upon the outcomes of an experiment, a random phenomenon. Its value at a given moment of time may be determined by position and velocities of the different constituents such as the atoms and molecules of the system. If we could follow the instantaneous value of x with time, we could see that this value fluctuates with time around a certain average. We denote the probability distribution function by pxt, where x is a certain variable. And another variable may be a random variable. And these random variables are definitely the outcomes of an experiment. The values of the random variable can be discrete or continuous. So there are a number of essential formulations regarding probability calculations which we all should know. Then there is a discrete or continuous distribution. There are examples of discrete and continuous description, such as for example of a discrete distribution is the throwing of a die or coin, whereas The distance traveled by different persons within a given time interval is a continuous distribution. And there are physical examples which emphasize the random fluctuating nature of variables. For example, if we measure the pressure of a liquid in equilibrium with a vapor, we shall see that the pressure is changing continuously and it is fluctuating around an average value. The same holds, or this is also true for the energy of a system at constant temperature or volume of the system. So, moving forward, another example from the microscopic world is the number of nearest neighbors that a particle has within its first shell. For example, if for a one component system of spherical atoms, this number varies between 9 and 13. So what inference do we get? From all the above examples, there exists an average, but the outcome can be different from an average and not predictable by an observer. Here comes the probability distribution, which describes the behaviors of the random variable. Another important terminology in probability description is the sample space. Sample space is nothing but the collection of all the outcomes of an experiment. For example, when you toss a coin, there can be two outcomes, head or tail. For example, if we toss the same coin twice, then we may have four possible outcomes, and so on. Another example could be the bus routes. Suppose you want to go from A to B via an intermediate stoppage at C. There are suppose m ways by which you can go from A to C, and there are n ways for A to reach B from C. So the total number of ways will be m into n. So these are certain examples of throwing a die and the possible number of outcomes and the calculation of probability. The total set of outcomes of any event then constitutes the sample space. The sample space allows us to define a probability distribution. In many cases, the outcomes of two events can be correlated. That is, the outcome of one event depends upon the outcome of the other. If two events are completely uncorrelated, then the occurrence of both will be simple multiplication of the probability of occurring of those events individually. So, joint probability of two events A and B is written as P under the parenthesis AB. If both A and B are uncorrelated, then joint probability of occurrence of A and B will be just the individual product of the individual probabilities. So, and one of other term is the conditional probability. Conditional probability means that suppose there are two events A and B. Given that an event A has already occurred, what is the probability of occurrence of B? Then use the phrase conditional probability. The presence of correlation between two events is measured by the conditional probability. The presence of correlation among two events, the volume of the sample space becomes less because the outcome of one experiment determines the outcome of, partly determines that of the other. Conditional probability is symbolized as P in the parenthesis B vertical bar A, which is defined as this ratio of two terms PBA upon PA.